what I've learned is that that change happens on different scales. There's sort of an immediate change where something that can affect the course of a particular struggle in a union, local, or in a community. This change that happens over a long time in terms of affecting people's consciousness. As far as where it fits in, I've really come to the conclusion that movement building and organizing is essentially about storytelling. That if I work with organizers in a union local, for example, what I look for is what is the story that people in this workplace tell themselves about what's going on. It's like we think in terms of stories. We imagine ourselves as part of a story. As a worker in a workplace, do I imagine myself as a cog in a concentration camp, downtrodden? Do I imagine myself as sort of a superhero, going out on my own to confront the boss? Do I see myself as a member of one big happy paternalistic family where the boss is my father and my friend? That has an impact, so that you can do it effectively or ineffectively. The right wing is very effective at seeing the entire country as a political stage in which you tell a story. And once you've framed that story, people think about themselves within that framework. And the catchphrases, taxes are a form of oppression, that regulating how much dioxin is poured into the river is an assault on our individual liberties. I mean, that kind of framing is extremely powerful. I was approached once to do a poster for, this was in 1990, it was the 20th anniversary of when anti-war protesters were gunned down by the National Guard at colleges in Mississippi and Ohio, at Jackson State and Kent State universities. And some students wanted to organize a national event to commemorate that anniversary, asked me to do a poster for it. And so the poster I came up with showed a lot of the struggles that had happened during the ensuing 20 years, between 1970 and 1990. So there were people marching with banners, about the anti-apartheid struggle and affirmative action and, the women's movement, all these different types of things. The Gay Liberation Front, one of the early movement organizations in that movement. And so it was a poster just full of all these images. Years later, I ran into a friend who lived in, I think it was Seattle, and she told me a story about how she had that poster up in her kitchen, on the door in her kitchen in her apartment. And her housemate was a young student, younger than her, who didn't know a lot about movement history but was very interested in it. And they had a ritual where every morning over their coffee before he went to school and she went to her job, where he would point to one of the images on that poster and she would tell him the story, what that struggle was about. Not very dramatic, just providing an opportunity for conversation, that's all it is, but a form of education. So when the year 2000 started approaching, that inspired me to team up with another artist, and we made a large poster, 2-foot by 3-foot poster called Century of Struggle, which tells the stories of US-based struggles for the entire 20th century. It has between 600 and 700 little images in there that represent political movements and struggles, starting, it was 1900 at the bottom, and ending with the battle in Seattle in 1999 at the top. And it's based on that principle of that this is not a... It's another thing that has, I think, always inspired me is the inherent dignity of people, so that a core piece of what I do as an artist is work with people who are moving in struggle and are generating their own consciousness, and work with them to try to make an authentic expression of what they do. And so it's very gratifying when these communities, these groups, whatever, take up what I do and make use of it. But also there's times where there is no movement happening, where sometimes you have people who are simply operating in isolation, and it's useful to have some light shed on that just for the morale support. So that I've done posters simply to say that no one is disposable, or to, about the children of people who are incarcerated. Things that are not major movements on the radar screen, but for those people, it's like, finding an oasis in the desert to have that be recognized and noticed. But again, it's not about me, it's about them, so that some communities suffer from, kind of the low self-esteem that comes with constant battering. And for them, it may be more important to encourage artists within that community to be the people who tell the story and put something to art. That in itself is a powerful statement. For other groups who are isolated in other ways, it's important to have an outside artist who's unrelated do something, because that says, you're visible to us, you're important to the world. So that there are bigger questions to ask, not what can I do as an artist to help something happen here, but what is needed. What is needed may not have anything to do with me at all. And so I can say, well, too bad, it makes me feel terribly unimportant, but, there's other things that I can do, and, maybe my meddling or my getting involved isn't what's important to